So tonight's webinar is part of our TD Culture Lab series. It's presented by the Mississauga Arts Council and sponsored by TD Bank Group. And it's all about professional development for artists, learning the business side of the arts because we're all good at doing the art. It's the business side that we run into challenges. And that's why Mississauga Arts Council is here to help. So the Mississauga Arts Council, we're a registered charity. We're dedicated to fostering the growth of the arts sector by cultivating creative opportunities and connections between artists and residents of Mississauga and beyond. We're dedicated to providing service-based programming for artists, funding artist-led programs, and growing awareness of the arts to build a vibrant and thriving cultural community in Mississauga. About me, so I am the administration lead of the Mississauga Arts Council. I've been with the organization for about 5 years, and I manage the office and I do our grant writing. I also manage our microgrant program, and I am also in charge of the TD Culture Lab professional development programs. And like everyone at MAC, we're a small office and it's all hands on deck for our big events and other things. So that's where I'm coming from. I've been with the company about 5 years, and I'm excited to talk to you about grants tonight because it's definitely a big part of my job and also what I love. This is really a high level overview about grants. We're not going to dive into the details because we can honestly talk about grants for weeks at a time. But what we're going to talk about tonight, just what is a grant? Who can apply for grants? Who gives out grants? How does one go about applying for a grant? What are the main components in a grant application? And what are some best practices and tips to keep in mind when going after a grant? And then we're going to get into a bit of Q&A. So first up, what is a grant? A grant is a sum of money given to a person or organization for a specific project or reason. So to receive a grant, the person or organization will submit an application to the funder. They'll talk about what they want to do, what sort of budget they need, and demonstrate how they will take the funder's money and create a successful project of some sort. A grant is different than a loan. So with a bank loan, you go to the bank and you say, I'd like some money to do this thing, and then you have to pay it back at the end. With a grant, instead of, you go to the funder and say, I'd like some money to do this thing, and they give you the money. And then instead of paying them back, you're going to report to them and say, this is how I spent your money. Look at how wonderful the project was. This is, the audience that we benefited. And this is how we changed the world with your money. Thank you so much. It was so important. So you're paying back the money in outcomes, or here we have the KPIs, key performance indicators, instead of a more financial back and forth. So they give you the money and you give them the benefits. So it kind of seems if you don't have to pay the money back, is a grant just free money? Well, no, because what you've done is you've put in this very complicated, very, very detailed application saying, this is how I'm going to spend your money. And then you have to spend the money in that way. It's not just, oh, sweet, money in your pocket, you can do what you want. There's specific expenses called eligible expenses that you can put the money towards. There's other things that a funder might not support, or parts of a project that they won't support and they'll only do part. So you really have to, dig into the grant a little, see what is funded, what isn't. And you also have to do what you say you're going to do. It's not just free money. So that's sort of an overview. Grant, you apply, say, I'm going to do this. You get the money, you get the project, and then you report back to the funder. So who can apply for a grant? And the answer is, it kind of depends. Generally, grants are provided either to individuals or to organizations. More often than not, grants are given to organizations, and some arts funders will give to individuals, but a lot of other funders might not. With each funder, the person giving the money, they'll have their own eligibility criteria. So it might be that they do give to individuals. It might be that a specific grant is only available to an organization or an individual. So you have to dig into each funder a little and see who they will give money to. I've even come across there's a specific seniors grant, and the organization will give money to a senior to provide a program for seniors. So if you're 20 and you want to do a program for seniors, you're not eligible. So each funder has their own, and it's something worth digging into. If in doubt, every grant will have guidelines. They'll be very detailed. It'll have everything kind of spelled out for you as to whether you're eligible or not and what the project will fund and what it won't. So if in doubt, check the guidelines. In the guidelines, or on the grantor's website, they might have something called funding streams or granting programs. And so, what are those? And basically, what it is, an organization. Think about the Ontario Arts Council. They have lots of money to give out to artists, organizations, and artists across different disciplines, whether it's dance or music or literary arts. And so what they do is they create funding streams. So they might have a grant program specifically for writers, and only writers can apply to that stream. Or they have another one for performing arts projects. And your project would have to be a performing arts, and you would have to be a performing arts artist to be able to apply. So that's sort of what funding streams are. So again, the funding streams are probably spelled out on the website or in the guidelines, and each grantor, each grant program is going to have their own criteria, their own guidelines. Each funding stream might have different criteria or might support different types of projects. So again, each funding stream will have their own guidelines. Dig into it a little bit, see what you think, what might fit, and then here's my best practice. All of the grantors will also have what they call a program manager or a grant officer. And so if you read the guidelines and you kind of think, well, I think I'm eligible, but I still have some questions, reach out to them. Send them an email that kind of says, hi, my name's so and so. I'm a musician. I'm looking at this grant and I'm wondering if I'm eligible. Here's a little bit about what I want to do. Would you be able to help me? Program officers love hearing from artists. They run these programs in support of artists, in support of people seeking funding, and they do like hearing from you. They need a very specific ask because they're busy, but they do enjoy having people reach out. And this way they can kind of guide you and say, I don't think that program's for you, but I have this other one, and this is why it might fit you. So they know their programs inside and out, and they can answer your questions. So definitely do your homework before you reach out, but then definitely reach out to the funder and just say, am I eligible? I'd like to know more. So I've been talking a lot about funders, funding organizations. So who gives out grants? They're provided to artists and artistic organizations. Sometimes a funder is a public funder. So that would be something like the Canada Council or the Ontario Arts Council, who have taxpayer money that they're giving out to artists. Sometimes they're a private funding organization. So that would be something like a business. And lots of the banks will have sort of a foundation, and lots of big companies will sort of, with their profits, they want to give it back to the community. And that would be a private funder. Sometimes it's a family foundation and they have lots of money, they want to give it back to charity, and they'll do it through a foundation. So that's what a private foundation is. So individual or company money, and a public is taxpayer money. So if you're an artist or an arts organization, a few arts funding bodies that you could reach out to: Canada Council for the Arts is national arts funding across the country. Ontario Arts Council supports artists in Ontario and traveling in Ontario. Mississauga Arts Council, us. We actually do our own fundraising, and 2 times a year we run a microgrant program, and we provide matching grants to artists. So a matching grant means we're not going to pay for the whole thing, but we'll pay for up to half of the project if you write us a great grant application. Some other options for individual artists and arts organizations are the City of Mississauga. They have project grants that they run mostly in the fall, but sometimes in the spring. And another one that individuals, if you're a musician, you can also look into Factor. So that's, I believe it's Ontario-based music recording grants, and they're open to individual musicians. If you're an arts organization or a group, there are other funders you can look to. These other funders don't give individuals grants. Ontario Trillium Foundation is only for Ontario nonprofits. Ontario Creates is for film and literature. I believe they're only for organizations and businesses, but I might be wrong. So you should look them up if you are in film or literature and you want to look into that. I also believe Ontario Creates has some prizes for individuals in literature, but I might be wrong. And then some other sort of local organizations that give arts funding in Mississauga: the Mississauga Foundation, the Port Credit Community Foundation, and the Hazel McCallion Foundation all give out arts funding. Those 3 are specifically for charities, so it's something to keep in mind. But if you are a charity, 3 really great options for you. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a few off the top of my head that I thought of when I was putting this presentation together, and a good place to get started and look for other grants as well. Okay, so now we get into the nitty gritty. We know we're eligible, we know who we're going to. How do you apply? How do you actually go about this? So, grant applications are a major undertaking, right? You're trying to tell the story of your project in words, numbers, dates, and you provide support materials to prove that you are who you say you are, that you're a wonderful artist that they should be supporting. So, how do we do it? One, find the funder. So, go to the list from the previous page, search for their grants, and see if there's something that you're eligible for. Next up, read the guidelines. Look through their grant programs to find one that seems to fit. Read the guidelines. Make sure your project fits with what they're looking for, what their guidelines are. And make sure you're eligible, right? If you're an individual artist, but they're only providing funding to organizations, it's not going to work, right? So make sure that you're eligible. Make sure your project is eligible. If in doubt, again, contact the program officer. They love hearing from you. They know their programs inside and out, and they'll be able to figure out the best alignment and answer any specific questions you might have. So now the nitty gritty. What is in a grant application? I said it was a major undertaking, and it is. So every grant is a little bit different. Every funder is going to ask, slightly different questions, but for the most part, these are sort of the four things that you can find in every single grant. So my challenge to you, the next time you're writing a grant, look for these four things. They might not be called this, but sort of look for them and be like, oh, I think that questions the project description. Oh, I think that questions the timeline. But these four parts will be in everything. So the first one is the project description. It's the most important part. It's a chance for you to tell the funder, what are you going to do? You get to brag about your project and say, this is what I'm doing. This is why it's so great. So really get into, what are you going to do? Who's going to be involved? When and where will it take place? Why is this project important? Why is this project relevant in the bigger community? Who is the audience of the project? These are all things you can talk about in your project description. And some funders want like just one sentence project description, and then you get to get a little bit bigger afterwards. One of my hot tips, when you're writing your project description, you can also kind of think to yourself, to get it down is, with this grant, I will blank. And when you fill in the blank, that's sort of your short form version. And then you can get into the more specific questions that I've outlined here. What are you going to do? When is it taking place? Why is it important? Anyway, so that's your project description. You get to tell the funder what you're going to do if you get their money. The next part is the budget. What you're going to do with your budget is you're going to say, here's the money I have coming in. Here are my expenses. And this is the amount I need from you to break even. So you get to tell them how much money you need, how you plan on spending their money. So if you say, I need to get $5,000 from you, how are you going to spend that $5,000? Is it on artist fees? Is it on venue rental? Is it on, sound system rental? Or, what are you going to use their money for? That's a really nice one that they like to see. And anything that you talk about in your budget, make sure you have mentioned it in the written part of your grant. So if you all of a sudden have, a venue rental, but your project description was talking about you're releasing a music song online, what do you need the venue rental for? So you can make notes and say, it's for recording, or we're having a CD release party and it's, the venue rental for the CD release party. But make sure anything in your budget you've mentioned in the written part. If those don't line up, then the funder gets confused and they're not quite sure what you're doing. The third part of our grant is the work plan or the schedule. So what steps are involved in your project? What are key dates or milestones that you need to achieve? Sometimes it's just a start date and an end date. Sometimes it's a really detailed work plan of, month one, I'm going to do this. Month two, I'm going to do this. Or, on this date, this is happening. On this date, this is happening. Here's the concert date. And then a week later, I'm going to send you a report. So it can, depending on the grant, it's more detailed, less detailed. But it's important to kind of have these key dates or milestones in your head when you're writing your grant, because it's going to affect sort of the overall thing, even if it's just a start and end date listed at the top of the grant application. So what you're going to do, how much it's going to cost, when you're going to do it. And then the fourth part of the grant is your support materials. So this is really your chance to show off to the funder. They don't know who you are. They don't know that you're the most amazing poet in the world. So show them your poetry and show them how great it is. Or, they don't know that you're the best dancer in the world. So show them your dances and show them why you are the best person to do this project. Or use your support materials to say, I did a similar project last year and here's how successful it was. And now we're going to do this and make it even bigger. So really the support materials is look what you have in your arsenal to brag a bit about yourself and show it to the funder. Hopefully this is starting lots of questions for everyone. So there's a million best practices and tips. These are just a couple off the top of my head to kind of get you started. So one, every grant has a deadline. Sometimes the deadline's flexible. Most of the time it is not. And they say 9 a.m. Monday morning. And if you're trying to hit submit at 9:01 on Monday morning, you will not be able to. They will not get your grant. That is it. You missed your opportunity. So grants have deadlines. Make sure you know when the application is due and set a personal deadline of at least 24 hours before that. Because technology will fail you, your internet will crash, and something will happen. And if you're doing it with 5 minutes to spare and your computer crashes, you're out of luck. But if you do it and your computer crashes and you have 24 hours to the deadline, you can probably still make it. So know the deadline and set a deadline at least a day earlier for yourself. Tip number 2, grant applications take time. They ask a lot of questions. You really have to understand what your project is, what the costs are, when it's going to take place before you can kind of get into the written questions. You really have to, you have to have a plan before you can talk about your plan. And then they have very specific questions that they ask you, which, you have to dream up answers for those. So this is not something you can leave to the last minute. As soon as you decide you want to apply, get the grant questions right away. Sometimes they're in the guidelines. Sometimes you need to open a portal and sort of download the guidelines from there or take the questions from the portal. Whatever you do, get the questions early. Take your time before the deadline so that you can get your materials together. Even just pulling support materials together can take time if you're going through your old video footage or trying to find your old music files. So make sure you know what they're asking for and make sure you take the time to gather everything properly. I've mentioned portals. I think I had this on a previous slide and kind of skipped over it because I knew it was coming up, and I just mentioned it with grant applications taking time. Grant portals. So many funders have a portal, a web platform, or some electronic way to accept applications. Canada Council has a portal. Right now it's closed for updates. It should be opening in the next few weeks, the brand new portal they've been promising us. Ontario Arts Council has a portal. City of Mississauga uses SurveyMonkey as their platform for grant applications. Mississauga Arts Council, we use JotForm, so a fillable form that you fill out. Those are a few off the top of my head. Mississauga Foundation also has a brand new portal that they've been using. The SurveyMonkey one is very, very common that I've seen. And so with the portals, also get familiar with it, right? Every technology has its little quibbles. And for the two big ones I mentioned, for Canada Council, for Ontario Arts Council, for Factor, for Ontario Creates, for all four of those, you need to create a profile for yourself. And it needs to be approved before you can apply for any of their grants. So if you look and you go, oh, they have a grant due in 2 days, that's wonderful, but you don't have a profile on their website, you probably won't be able to apply for that grant because it can take up to 3 months for them to approve your profile. So if you are interested in any of their grants, tonight after this webinar, sign on to Canada Council, Ontario Arts Council, and log in and start setting up your profile. Because as I said, it can take up to 3 months to be approved. And especially for those two, once you're approved, then you can easily see what you're eligible to apply for, rather than going through all of the grants on their website and not quite being sure. So definitely look into that. And even if you don't apply for a grant for the next 3 years from them, your profile is good indefinitely, and you can always come back to it and start looking at grants in the future. So get your profile done early, know about the deadline, make sure you start working early. And those are my hot tips for everyone. A couple of resources that Mississauga Arts Council has available for everyone. On our website, we have a page called Grants for Artists. We've curated a list of grant funders with links to their websites, a little description of each funder, and most of them are from the list earlier. We kind of keep that one updated, so keep an eye on that. And it's a good way to link out to some of these organizations to see if they might have a grant for you. Another really great resource we have is our TD Culture Lab page on our website. So in the past, we have done at least 3 grant writing webinars, sort of, 10 things to do, 10 things not to do. We've also had people from the Ontario Arts Council talking about their grant programs, and we've done a rundown of grants available for Mississauga artists. So that is all available on our website. This video will also be there, and we also have info sessions on our own grants. So a really great resource for you. Thank you so much for being a part of our presentation.